Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at information gaps.
Ooh, exciting.
Yeah, and how we can use them to make better decisions.
Oh, good.
Our main source for this deep dive is going to be Winning Mindset by Lincoln Haverford,
Okay.
and specifically the chapter on wealth, where he talks all about how spotting these gaps can lead to some really profitable outcomes.
I like it.
Yeah, so imagine like knowing where the gold rush is going to be before everyone else shows up.
Right.
That's the kind of edge we're talking about today.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
So what do you think about when you hear information gaps? Like, do you encounter them in your everyday life?
You know, I think we probably all do without even realizing it.
Uh-huh.
Like maybe you're the go-to person in your friend group for tech advice.
Right.
Because you're always up on the latest gadgets.
Yeah,
That's an information gap you're filling right there.
totally.
Or maybe you found this amazing new restaurant
Yeah.
that nobody else knows about yet.
Oh, yeah.
Boom, information gap.
I'm seeing them everywhere now.
They're all over the place.
So okay, we've established that they're everywhere.
Right.
But how do we actually translate that into like opportunities?
Yeah.
Especially the kind that can affect our wallets.
Right. So Haverford defines these gaps as an uneven distribution of knowledge. So
Right.
some people are making decisions based on like outdated or incomplete information.
Mhm.
And other people are armed with these key insights and they're making moves that lead to big wins.
So it's not just about having information.
Exactly.
It's about having the right information
Yes,
at the right time.
precisely.
It's like having a time machine, but for knowledge.
That's a great way to put it.
I like that.
And you know, Haverford actually uses this brilliant gold rush analogy
Okay.
to illustrate how these gaps emerge and change over time.
I love a good analogy.
Me too. It's a good way to make it really clear.
Yeah, and relatable.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
he breaks it down into these three distinct phases,
Okay.
just like a real gold rush.
Just hear it.
All right. So first up, we have the exploration phase.
Okay.
So think about like those early pioneers venturing into uncharted territory.
Right.
It's a time of high risk,
Sure.
but also incredibly high potential reward.
High risk, high reward.
Exactly like those first Bitcoin miners back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
Or the app developers who jumped on the scene at the dawn of the iPhone.
Wow. Yeah. So like those brave souls who were just willing to like take a chance,
Absolutely.
knowing that they could strike it rich or
Yeah.
just, end up with nothing.
Yeah, it's definitely not for the faint of heart.
Not at all. So,
Us-
so what happens when the word gets out?
Right. So then we move into increased competition.
Okay.
Things start heating up as more people catch wind of the opportunity.
Yeah.
Larger companies might start sniffing around, maybe acquiring smaller players, and the focus kind of shifts to efficiency
Right.
and staying ahead of the curve.
So like when smartphones exploded onto the scene
Yes.
and suddenly everyone and their grandmother was trying to develop the next killer app.
Yeah, that's a perfect example. And you know what's interesting is that while that exploration phase is dominated by like innovators
Yeah.
and risk takers,
Yeah.
the second phase
Uh-huh.
is where a wider range of folks have a chance to succeed.
Mm.
It still requires agility and smart decision making,
Yeah.
but the risk isn't quite as wild as in that first phase.
So you're saying this is where things get interesting for the average person.
Absolutely. This is the sweet spot that Haverford highlights in the book.
Okay.
Because you see in phase one, the information is often like confidential or very hard to come by.
Right.
But by phase two, the trend is clearer, the risk is lower, and you're not going head to head with established giants.
When I was reading this, I was wondering why Haverford was so bullish on phase two.
Yeah.
But what you just said, like, makes it crystal clear.
Yeah.
It's like finding a gold vein that's been mapped out
Yes.
that hasn't been completely mined yet.
Exactly. You still need to have the skills and the tools to extract that gold.
Right.
But you're not starting from scratch in the middle of nowhere.
But all good things must come to an end, right?
Right.
So what happens when the gold rush starts to cool down?
That brings us to the market maturity phase.
Okay. Is that when the party's over?
Not necessarily. The major players have settled in.
Uh-huh.
They've built their empires. The early birds are enjoying their fortunes.
Right.
And while there's still potential for profit,
Yeah.
it's much harder for newcomers to break in.
So like those businesses that popped up around the gold rush
Yes.
to service the miners,
Exactly.
they weren't digging for gold themselves.
Right.
But they were still cashing in on the boom.
Exactly.
Like all those shops selling supplies, restaurants feeding those hungry prospectors.
Precisely, they were capitalizing on the infrastructure and the demand created by the earlier phases.
So the opportunity shifts rather than disappears completely.
Yeah.
But at that point, going head-to-head with those established giants would be like bringing a pickaxe to a gunfight.
Yeah, it would be quite the uphill battle, but even in this phase, there are opportunities
Okay.
for those who can identify and cater to specific niches
Right.
or provide valuable services to the existing players.
So we've got these three phases:
Yes,
exploration, increased competition, and market maturity.
that's right.
But how do we, the listeners, actually put this knowledge into action?
Yeah, that's the big question, right?
Yeah. How do we find these information gaps?
Uh-huh.
And then once we find them, how do we profit from them?
That's where things get really exciting and where Haverford provides some very actionable strategies. He shows us how to minimize our own information gaps and capitalize on emerging trends. But we'll dive into those in the next part of our deep dive.
Stay tuned.
Welcome back to part 2 of our deep dive into information gaps.
Picking up right where we left off, trying to figure out how to actually find and use these gaps to our advantage.
Yeah, it's all about becoming more informed and savvy in a world that's just constantly bombarding us with information.
It really is like drinking from a fire hose sometimes.
It really is. And that's why I think Haverford's strategies for bridging these gaps are so valuable.
Yeah.
They help us filter out all that noise and just zero in on what really matters.
We talked before about those search engines,
Right.
online communities,
Yeah.
and even tapping into expert advice.
Yeah.
But there's another tool that Haverford highlights that I found fascinating: language.
Oh, yeah. He makes a really interesting point about language being a gateway to knowledge.
Yeah.
You know, an idea that might be common knowledge in one language
Yeah.
could be completely unheard of in another.
So if you're only reading and listening to things in your native language, you're missing out on a whole world of insights.
Absolutely. There could be groundbreaking research happening in another country,
Wow.
innovative business models being developed, or even ancient wisdom traditions being preserved,
Yeah.
all in a language you don't understand.
It's like having a treasure map but not being able to read the language it's written in.
That's a great analogy.
You know, there's something valuable there, but you can't access it.
Exactly. And that's where those modern translation technologies come in.
Right.
They're like the Rosetta Stone for the digital age,
I like that.
allowing us to break down those language barriers and access a much wider pool of knowledge.
It's pretty amazing when you think about it.
It is.
But even with all this information at our fingertips,
Right.
you can't just absorb everything without a filter.
Absolutely. Not all information is created equal.
Right.
Haverford really stresses the importance of critical thinking, especially online.
Yeah.
You need to be able to separate fact from fiction, signal from noise.
Like that old saying, don't believe everything you read on the internet.
Exactly. Be a critical consumer.
Yeah.
Ask yourself, who wrote this? What are their biases? Are there other sources that back up these claims?
It's like being a detective.
Yes.
Gathering evidence and piecing together the truth.
Exactly. And don't forget, your own expertise is a valuable tool in this process. You wouldn't hesitate to question something that sounded off in your own field, right?
Right.
Apply that same healthy skepticism to information you come across in other areas.
Right. Trust your gut, but also be willing to dig a little deeper and verify what you're reading or hearing.
Exactly.
So we've talked about bridging information gaps, but Haverford also offers this mind-blowing approach to actually profiting from them.
Yes, he calls it the time machine theory, and it was actually popularized by SoftBank founder Masayoshi Son.
Okay.
Son was fascinated by how far ahead the U.S. internet industry was compared to Japan's. He saw the U.S. market as a window into Japan's potential future.
Hold on, this is blowing my mind. It's like having a time machine, not for traveling through time, but for understanding how trends evolve.
Exactly.
Are you telling me we can actually predict the future by looking at other industries?
That's exactly what Son did.
Wow.
He realized that Japan was essentially a snapshot of where the U.S. had been several years earlier.
Okay.
He used that insight to invest in American companies that were already successful.
And then brought those innovations to Japan.
So he basically used the present state of one market to predict the future of another.
Yeah.
That's incredibly clever.
It is.
But how do we find those parallels, those patterns that repeat themselves across different industries?
That's where careful observation and analysis come in.
Right.
Haverford suggests that industries often develop at different speeds. So by looking at what's happening in a faster-moving industry
Okay.
and applying that knowledge to a slower one, we can gain a real advantage.
It's like saying, hey, I bet that same pattern will play out over here,
Exactly.
but with a lot more data and insight backing it up.
Exactly. And this time machine effect can help you anticipate trends more accurately and make smarter decisions.
So it's not about being a passive consumer of information.
Right.
It's about actively engaging with it,
Yeah.
looking for those hidden connections, and then using those insights to make informed decisions.
And remember, information gaps aren't just about making money. Okay, now you're really speaking my language. Tell me more.
Think about it. Information gaps can exist in areas like healthcare education and social justice.
Uh-huh.
By identifying and bridging those gaps, we can help create a more equitable and just world.
So it's not just about personal gain. It's about using our knowledge to make a real difference.
Precisely. For example, imagine if we could bridge the gap between developed and developing countries when it comes to healthcare innovations.
Yeah.
We could potentially save millions of lives.
Or think about the education gap between different socioeconomic groups.
Right.
By providing access to quality education and resources, we could help break the cycle of poverty and create a more level playing field.
Exactly. The possibilities are endless.
Wow.
It's about recognizing the power of information and using it responsibly and ethically to create positive change.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with a challenge.
A challenge to think critically about the information they consume, to be proactive in seeking out new knowledge, and to use their unique insights to make a positive impact on the world.
And hey, who knows? Maybe you'll even discover the next big opportunity hiding in plain sight. Stay tuned for part 3, where we'll explore this further. Welcome back to the Deep Dive Knowledge Seekers. We're wrapping up our exploration of information gaps and how to flip them into opportunities thanks to Lincoln Haverford and his book, Winning Mindset.
Yeah, we've really covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
Starting with those 3 phases of an information gap,
Right.
from that wild west of exploration to the more accessible increased competition,
Right.
all the way to the established order of market maturity.
And we dug into those practical strategies for minimizing our own gaps.
Absolutely.
Leveraging search engines,
Yes.
online communities, even learning new languages to unlock those hidden insights.
It's amazing when you think about how much valuable knowledge could be out there, just tucked away in languages we don't understand.
It really is like entire libraries of knowledge just waiting to be discovered.
Right.
And thanks to those translation technologies, we're getting closer to unlocking them every day.
It's pretty exciting.
It is, but of course, as we discussed, it's not just about the quantity of information we consume.
Right.
It's about the quality, too.
Absolutely.
We have to be discerning.
Yeah.
We got to be critical about the information we encounter.
You can't just accept everything you read online at face value.
No.
We need to be like detectives,
Yeah.
evaluating sources, considering potential biases, piecing together the truth from all these different perspectives.
Look at that old saying.
What is it?
Don't believe everything you read on the internet.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But
Yeah?
but let's not forget that inspiring side of information gaps, too.
Right.
We talked about how they can actually be leveraged to make a real difference in the world.
Yeah.
We explored how these gaps exist in areas like healthcare education and social justice.
Right.
And by bridging those gaps, we can help create a more equitable and just world.
It's pretty exciting to think about that potential for positive change, right?
Yeah.
What if we could connect doctors in developing countries with the latest medical research?
Right.
Or provide access to quality education for students from disadvantaged backgrounds?
Yeah.
The possibilities are pretty mind-boggling.
They really are.
And that's where that time machine theory we discussed becomes even more powerful.
It does.
Right.
Yeah.
By observing trends in one area,
Uh-huh.
we can anticipate how those same trends might play out in other areas that are lagging behind.
Yeah.
And I know we keep saying this, but we're not talking about a literal time machine, of course.
Of course not.
But it's the closest we can get to peering into the future,
I agree.
right? It's like we're all time travelers in a way,
Yeah.
armed with this knowledge and these insights
Uh-huh.
that can help us shape a better future.
That's a great way to put it.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought.
Okay, shoot.
A thought to inspire you to embrace the power of information you know,
Yeah.
to be curious,
Be critical.
and to use what you know to create positive change.
I love that.
The most valuable treasures aren't always buried deep underground.
Right.
Sometimes they're hidden in plain sight, just waiting for us to uncover them.
And that's the beauty of the information age, right?
It is. The adventure is just beginning, and the possibilities are truly limitless. So thanks for joining us on this deep dive into information gaps.
It's been fun.
We hope you've discovered some valuable nuggets of knowledge along the way.
If you want to dive deeper into these concepts, I cover them extensively in my book, Winning Mindset: The Ultimate Guide to Cultivating Confidence, Growth, and Assertive Leadership for Lasting Success. The book is available for purchase on Amazon, and it expands on the ideas discussed in this video, along with much more. You can find the link to the book in the description below. Thank you for tuning in to Win with Lincoln. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe for more insights on leadership and relationships.